When it comes to sexual harassment and predatory behavior by powerful men, we are living in historic times. Never before has the curtain been peeled back as it has been over the past few months. And we're learning that much of that illegal behavior has been enabled by co-workers or associates in the workplace who turn a blind eye or even enable that conduct. Let's look into that aspect of the story with Janice Rubin. She's a lawyer with the Toronto firm Rubin Tomlinson, and we are delighted to welcome you back to TVO.
Thanks for having me.
One of these days we're going to have you here and talk about something pleasant, but not yet apparently.
All right.
Let's set this up because you did a survey of your email subscribers
That's right.
earlier this year, and you got almost 200 responses from the request. And let's just, Sheldon, should we put this up right now and we'll just talk about some of what you found coming back. 79% of the respondents had personally witnessed, heard of, or heard about harassment and discrimination in their workplace. Interestingly, 87% elected to do something about it, or they said they did. Of that group, 33% directly intervened and told the person to stop it, and a little more than a quarter told someone in management or HR about it. And I guess I want to start by just finding out, when you got those numbers back, initial impressions.
Well, our initial impressions were that we had a huge potential, perhaps not a solution to workplace harassment generally, but a resource that employers could tap into that was somewhat underutilized. So one, we know workplace harassment, sexual harassment in particular, is pervasive. It's difficult to get at. It's underreported. How does an employer fix it if they don't know about it? And what those responses told us is lots of people know about the harassment when it's going on. It's not surprising, but confirm what we thought.
But this is sort of from your world. Do you have any reason to believe that if you took this survey society-wide, you would get similar feedback?
Well, we would probably have lower numbers in terms of people who felt sufficiently enabled to come forward and report it. We might have slightly lower numbers in terms of who knew about it. But, you know, about a month ago, there was an American survey, I think it was the Wall Street Journal and NBC, that found that I think 51%, 49, 51%, somewhere around halfway mark of men in American workplaces had seen sexual harassment in the workplace. So, you know, our numbers are a little bit higher than that, but, you know, I think the takeaway is lots of people know about it.
I was certainly surprised when I saw that 87% elected to do something about it. Were you surprised? That seems like a very high number.
Yeah, and I think that's probably reflective of who we as a firm were asking. These are people who are involved in employee relations or internal counsel, who perhaps feel the obligation to act a little more strongly than you know, a typical colleague in a workplace. But it was encouraging.
Nearly 4 in 10 intervening because, quote, they thought it was the right thing to do.
That's right, and that's very telling for us too, because again, if we think of workplace bystanders as a underutilized resource, how do we get them to act? And it seems the survey results, as well as the case law that we've been looking at, if you can if you can get somebody to act on the basis of empathy, I empathize with the person who's being harassed, or a sense of, you know, justice in the workplace, that seems to be effective.
Those are powerful values, but so are, that guy's my friend and I don't think I can squeal on him.
Yep.
When those two values come into clash, what happens?
Well, I think historically, the don't squeal on him, or I don't want to get involved, or I don't know what to do, these are all elements of what's called the bystander effect, why people don't want to intervene, has prevailed. But my own view is there's something fairly significant going on in the zeitgeist. There is a shift, I think, or the beginning of a shift in terms of our understanding of workplace harassment, sexual harassment in particular, and I think the climate is ripe for the second value to prevail, which is this isn't right. This is not the type of behavior that's consistent with the workplace that I want to come into. And if we have a problem here, one element of the problem is if I don't come forward, so I should act.
Can I clarify with you what the this is in this case? Because I have heard, I mean, it may be like Potter Stewart saying, you know, I know it when I see it, right?
Yeah.
How about repeated, persistent attempts to ask somebody out for dinner all of which have been rebuffed up until now. Is that considered workplace sexual harassment?
Yeah, I think that would be considered workplace sexual harassment. There is, the thinking is one ask is okay, and then when the answer is no, once you go back a second time, you know, you've crossed a boundary. But even the one ask in some circumstances is really problematic, because if the one ask is from the CEO,
right.
do you really feel to somebody down the
yeah.
down the food chain? Do you really feel, you know, fully empowered to say no? So I think that there's a whole line of behavior, you know, the asking that a whole bunch of people, senior male people, senior female people too, but predominantly it's a male versus female phenomena, that just don't go there.
Because I have had some people come up to me and saying, look, at Harvey Weinstein, we get it. That's, you know, appalling predatory conduct, and there's no ambiguity about that. But then I was given the example of repeated invitations to dinner, and there was some confusion about that. Is it possible here that many men in good faith just don't know where the line is anymore?
You know, I think many men in good faith don't know where the line is, and I also think that many women don't know where the line is. And where the line gets confusing there is how much am I supposed to put up with? What is kind of the cost of coming to work here? What should I not say? And when you look at the law, it's quite clear what behaviors are that cross the line. You know, repeated solicitation, overly solicitous, you know, compliments.
Yeah, but nobody knows the law. Anybody who comes to work doesn't know what the law is.
Okay, but
they may know what good taste is, but they don't know what law is.
Okay, but read a newspaper. You know, every day we see an example of what not to do.
That's so true nowadays, isn't it? It's so true.
The social media campaign, #MeToo, look at all the examples there.
Mm-hmm. Almost 70% of organizations you surveyed had anonymous telephone hotlines. Is that something that maybe every organization needs?
I think so, because when you talk about learning about harassment that's gone underground, you need a couple of different channels to facilitate reporting. Obviously, the traditional channel that most of us know about, you know, make a complaint, go to a supervisor, go to HR. That's great, and in fact, in Ontario, that's legally mandated. But beyond that, what we know is there is such fear, such profound fear about reporting, that we have to create a secondary channel, at least, that allows people to report, and particularly a bystander, if it's not you, that allows a person to report something anonymously. And they actually work. They actually work. Bystanders,
I guess, are a hugely underutilized resource in ending this phenomenon, right?
That is our theory, yes.
That's the theory. So if we can sort of deputize bystanders to get involved and not just turn a blind eye, you got a shot at eliminating this, or a better shot at eliminating this.
It's another tool, and in fact, there's evidence from Canadian workplaces where that's being used. So the Canadian Armed Forces is a leader in bystander training as part of their execution of Operation Honor. This was the program to remediate a culture that was deeply sexualized and problematic. One element of that program is bystander training. As far as I understand, everybody now in the Canadian Armed Forces has had bystander training, and the result of that is an increase in reporting. So it works. We know from them it works.
The Ontario government, of course, has weighed in on this. They did an ad campaign that really got a lot of people talking. Let's just show a little example of that for those who haven't seen it, and then we'll come back and chat. Sheldon, the clip, if you would.
Thanks for keeping your mouth shut.
Thanks for minding your own business.
Come on, show me the good ones. Thanks for not telling my girlfriend. Say that to me.
Hi!
Thanks for not telling anyone.
When you do nothing, you're helping him. But when you do something, you help her.
Thanks for telling the bartender.
Thanks for stopping him.
Thanks for telling HR.
Thanks for getting help.
Now, to its credit, the Ontario government had these ads out well before the Harvey Weinstein thing broke, and we have now seen an avalanche of others coming forward. How effective do you think that campaign was?
Well, I thought the ads were fantastic. I thought in displaying stuff that really happens, and I can tell you from our practice, all of those examples really happen. They really happen. And by contrasting what happens to with examples of how bystanders can intervene. So in terms of getting the message across, I thought those ads were fantastic.
In terms of creating, though, the kind of bad word, but I don't know what else to say, infrastructure in place that companies need in order to empower bystanders to do something, what do we need?
Well, part of it is infrastructure, but I think where we start from is leadership. We have leaders of organizations who say this behavior is not to be tolerated in our organization, and then they model that behavior. It doesn't make any sense if a leader is coming forward and saying this is the behavioral expectation, and their own behavior doesn't align with that, and we've seen lots and lots of examples of that. So I think it starts from a very strong statement from the top, and it's disseminated through the organization through clear policies. One of the things that we found in our survey is only 50% of individuals had reference to bystanders in their surveys. So you have to, it's not always an intuitive role, so you've got to name them in your policies, and you've got to identify what their role is and where they can go, and what they can do. We saw in those clips various different interventions that bystanders can employ. So you need good leadership, policy, training. Everybody needs to be trained in terms of what their role is, where they can go. And that way it disseminates throughout the organization. So it is a little bit of infrastructure in terms of communicating policy and delivering training, but I think it's a moral stance really from the top.
If you want to consider leadership, I don't know if you saw this the other day, I think there's a female CEO for a financial institution in Boston who decided that she was going to move from the corner office away from everybody and put her desk right in the middle of the room where everybody, she's right in the middle of it now, right, so she could keep an eye on things. Advisable?
Well, I mean, that's one way of going about it. I mean, I think that one vulnerability that leaders have on a whole range of issues, but this in particular, is that people don't tell them things. And so they may think that, there's been no complaints, nobody's told them that there's a problem, and we're good in an organization as far as this issue is concerned. And yet, deep in that organization, there can be all sorts of problematic behavior that they don't know about.
Let's go up to 30,000 feet and take the overarching view of things. Over the past few months, as we suggested in the intro, this issue has just exploded into our consciousness as never before. Is this unambiguously, in your view, a good thing?
I think it is a good thing. I do. I think what we're seeing is elements of the problem, and looking at this problem makes people uncomfortable. It involves people who we like, who perhaps now we have information about them that we don't like them so much. But I think it's a good thing, and I think it helps us, for those of us who aren't working in this every day. I do, so this is not surprising to me, but for those of us who aren't, I think it's helpful to understand how pervasive this problem is, how pernicious it is.
It's not just show business.
It's not just show business, it's everywhere. And it's interesting, we have stories from media, we have stories from politics, we have
business.
Stories professional services. It's everywhere. So I do think it's a good thing. I think what we need to do for those of us who are working in this area is really leverage the fact that the climate has changed and do the work that we need to do to make change.
I wonder, though, whether one of the consequences of this is that now every man is under suspicion, because there were a whole lot of people out there who we never would have imagined. I mean, Senator Al Franken, for goodness sakes. Is every man under suspicion now? No, you don't think so?
No, I don't think every man is under suspicion. There are many, many, many good men. There are many men who are allies to women in the workplace. There are many men who are leading by example in terms of how to interact with colleagues respectfully,
but he would have been one of them, Janice. He would have been one of those people who I would have thought, okay, progressive guy, cares about women, conducts himself appropriately, etc. Except no.
I think it's a mistake to use these bad examples as sort of generalize all men are under suspicion. I think that would be a mistake.
How about another scenario here? You are a friend, not you. Someone's a friend.
Yeah.
And you have now discovered that this friend has comported himself in an appalling fashion. Give some advice to the rest of us. Do we have to end our friendship with that person? Do we have to take him? What do we do now?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on where you are. If you're talking about a work colleague, I think there are different ways in which to intervene. So, for example, one technique for bystanders is, let's say you see your friend interacting with a female and it's offside. Right. You can actually remove your friend. That doesn't put
you walk right into that situation and you intervene.
You intervene. There's some interesting cases involving firefighters. There's a great case from Brampton where that's exactly what happened. Somebody was overheard a really problematic conversation between a senior male firefighter and a more junior female, and he actually intervened in that situation, knocked it off, and then took the guy away.
What was the consequence?
Well, the consequence was, in that case, it was very interesting. There were two more bystander interventions. There was an anonymous report. Somebody else had seen it in that situation, and then another person actually formally reported it. And in the end, the guy was terminated.
So there was a positive development at the end of the day.
There was a positive development at the end of the day. He was disciplined. Yeah.
I mean, again, since all this happened, it's amazing how much we talk about this now in a way we never did before. But I have had lots of people come up to me and say, Steve, I have never seen this happen in any workplace I've ever been in. Is that now, given how pervasive you know this to be, is this a case of willful blindness? Is this a case of maybe it's not as pervasive in some worlds as it is in other worlds? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there are some workplaces that are run in such a way that this type of behavior isn't present. And that, in the work that we do, I would say is not by accident. That would be because there's good, strong leadership. There's a standard of behavior that's set out, and people are held to be accountable to that standard, and people understand how it is that they're supposed to behave when they go to the workplace. So I think that those workplaces do exist, and I don't think that they're by accident. But I also think that because this tends to go underground, and perhaps there is sort of an undernaming of problematic behavior. We saw in that commercial, the creepy shoulder rub. Yeah. How many people would understand that to be sexual harassment? I can't tell you how many times, as part of our investigations, creepy shoulder rub is there. It's a form of sexual harassment, but how many people would label that sexual harassment? I don't know. So, in terms of saying it's not in my organization, is it because the behavior's there and people don't quite understand what it is?
Good point. Whenever there are an avalanche of complaints that now come forward, as is happening now, how concerned are you that someone, even one person, may bear false witness?
May bear false witness.
Is that a thing? Is that like a woman coming forward and in an effort to get revenge on somebody who done her wrong,
yeah,
makes something up? Hasn't happened yet that we can tell, but how worried are you about that phenomenon?
I think it's a thing in as much as people talk about it as part of the narrative around the story, but in terms of being an actual thing, the percentage of cases that we investigate where, a complainant has completely made something up for, purposes of reprisal or retribution is tiny. I'm trying to think if I've ever had one. I mean, we've had cases where, people's recollection is flawed, or the behavior that's upsetting to them when you look at it in the cold heart of day doesn't constitute sexual harassment. So not every complainant that comes forward who we've interviewed has a successful complaint, but that kind of narrative out there in our practice is really not that present. I think it's overstated as part of this narrative.
Okay, let's finish up on this. Do you have any theories as to why this phenomenon is almost uniquely male?
Why? Well, okay. Why is it uniquely? First of all, it's not uniquely male. I mean, it's predominantly male in as much as
99% male.
Well,
feels like it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, 4 times as many women are sexually harassed at work than men, and there certainly are examples of same-sex harassment. But it's because men still have more power than women in society. This is, in the end, an abuse of power. And who are predominantly the CEOs, the faces of organizations, the people who can use their positions of influence, the Harvey Weinsteins, they're predominantly men. And until we have more women in roles of power and in roles of influence, we're going to have a tough slog here.
So you're putting this up mostly to a power imbalance as opposed to that's how they're wired, it's in the DNA, it's a genetic thing.
I think that's disservice to men. I think it's a power imbalance, and I think it's a power imbalance that is enabled in our culture and is enabled in the way many of our workplaces run.
Well, as I said off the top, one day we'll get you back here to talk about something a little more pleasant. But until then, we appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me.
That's Janice Rubin from Rubin Tomlinson.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.